Welcome to Monday, a Monday in the halfway through the London Funders Festival of Learning for 2024. We're really pleased to have you here for this exciting session led by the Co-op Foundation, thinking about co-designing, co-delivering funding, engaging people in all of this. This is my first Festival of Learning session. I don't know why I haven't been asked to chair all of them, because I really enjoy doing this. But all I'm doing is just welcoming you all to this. Hopefully you've been to other sessions before, because there's a packed programme. This year, I think we had more applications to take part than any previous year. 5 core themes, which are around participation, process, equity, collaboration, and systemic change. All of those are super exciting, but this one very much sitting in the participation space, possibly the most exciting of all. We'll be tweeting from the session. And we're also recording. If there's anything that you don't want us to share or record, you can just let us know that. If you want to say something that you don't want to be shared, just put something in the chat about it. But without further ado, I am going to hand over to our fabulous speakers today and to our chair, Dr. Asimina Vergou from the Co-op Foundation.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Geraldine and Grace, for giving us the opportunity to share our work and learnings from other funders in the UK. Good morning, everybody. I hope the sun is shining to you as well as outside in my balcony. Just to introduce myself, I'm Asimina Vergou, Head of Learning and Impact at the Co-op Foundation, and describe myself, I'm a white female Greek heritage with black hair and a nature-based t-shirt with a Messi's bookcase background. I'll do a short intro before handing over to our panel members to introduce themselves. This session is the second session we organize as part of sharing our learnings from a scoping study on funding individuals. Almost a year ago, as at the Co-op Foundation, we were starting designing our first fund to individuals, and we wanted to learn from other funders. So we conducted an in-house study on how other funders give funding to individuals. Today, we're just going to focus on delivering the funding in collaboration with partner organizations and a little bit on the Funder Plus support. But you can also find the recording of our launch to find out about other aspects of this funding and read our scoping study on our website if you want to invest in individuals. It's almost a how-to manual with lots of details for the different aspects you need to consider. So just to share very short key learnings and then hand over to our panel members. Hope everybody can see the... So when we started our scoping study, we really wanted to understand what are the key skills a funding team need to have in order to invest in individuals, because we've never given funding directly to young people. We only funded organizations. So we found that it is really important, the funding team, to have lived experience and background similar to the grant recipients, have skills that, we wouldn't usually, expect the funding team to have, like digital skills, facilitation, project management and service design skills, soft skills like being good with people, being empathetic and understanding, networking and strategic thinking, and knowledge around key areas such as campaigning and community organizing, safeguarding, which is really important, and technical expertise depending on the focus of the fund. We also found that it is really crucial to have experience in areas such as youth work and social work. And we found that when funders get to start the funding to individuals, they find delivery partners that can offer capacity building, pastoral support to individuals, leadership development, have expertise in safeguarding and communications, so that they can attract new applicants that, you know, the funders is not able to attract until that point, have good knowledge of the communities, and very importantly, manage finances and distribute funds to individuals flexibly and directly. Some funders who didn't have the skills that I mentioned earlier would go and employ new members in their team with the skills. Other funders had already, you know, existing members in the team with the skills. Other funders decided to work with delivery partners, as I mentioned, as was the case with the Cobb Foundation. And some lessons learned we found from our scoping study. It is important for the funder not to cause damage to the delivery partner when they're working together, to clarify who is doing what, who is responsible for what, to ensure that the delivery partner focuses on doing what they already have expertise, but they also have resources in the team to deliver the things. There is importance in having open, continuous communications and transparency so that the delivery partner and the funder can share things when, challenges occur. The power dynamics are important. So is this an equal partnership with the delivery partner, or is it a commissioning relationship? And the funder also needs to be flexible. So lots of learnings around, power dynamics, which we're going to discuss in a minute. And last, we found that quite often the delivery partners were responsible for capacity building, doing the funder plus aspect of the funding to individuals by providing training, expert advice, networking, peer learning, coaching and mentoring, or just signposting to individuals, to other organizations and information they need to deliver their projects. And the training themes that we found that were often kind of supported individuals were around well-being, financial training, charity law, safeguarding, campaigning, leadership skills, how to set up your charity or your enterprise, and also evaluation. So now, as part of this session and building on the learnings from our scoping study, we have our amazing panel members, including our delivery partners for the Young Gamechangers Fund. So I would welcome our panel members to introduce yourself before we start our panel discussion. So first, Emma, over to you.
Thanks, and hi everyone. So my name's Emma. I'm the head of programs at Smallwood Trust. I've been here for about 6 years now. Just to describe myself, so I'm a white woman with short brown hair. I am wearing a green dress and a blue top, and there is a window behind me.
Thank you, Emma. Keith, over to you.
Thanks, Asimina. So my name's Keith Short. I'm the head of UK and European programs at Restless Development. So we're one of the delivery partners on the Young Gamechangers Fund. I'm a white male with a beard and kind of short hair, but bald on top, and I've got a burgundy shirt on. And I'm in a meeting room with Katherine and Tim as well from Global Fund for Children.
Thank you, Keith. Over to Tim.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim. I'm the Young Gamechangers Fund Programme Manager working for Global Fund for Children. I'm nestled in the middle of the shared meeting room that we're in. Also a white male with a dark beard and wearing a cream shirt.
And Katherine, over to you.
Thank you, Asimina. Hello, everybody. My name is Katherine Gilmour. I'm here with 2 hats on today. I work for Global Fund for Children. As part of that, I am our Senior Regional Co-Director for Europe and Eurasia. So I support Tim and the team on the Young Gamechangers Fund. But I also have a second role at GFC, which is as Global Spark Fund Director. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the Spark Fund as well. I am sitting on the far, I don't know what side, but as you'll see it, the far right as you'll see it probably. And in the meeting room, I am a white woman with long dark hair. I am wearing a green summery dress because I was assured the weather in Manchester would be better than Scotland, but it's miserable. So I'm then also wearing a dark black cardigan over the top to keep warm. I'm excited to be with you today.
Thank you so much. So today we'll be sharing learnings from 3 key funding programs to individuals. So Emma, over to you to talk to us about the funding you have at Smallwood Trust.
Thanks, Asimina. So the Smallwood Trust, as a funder, we've been around for nearly 140 years now. And for most of our history, we have provided grants direct to individual women. So our mission is all about helping women to be financially resilient, and to help partners to end gendered poverty. So we used to make grants in several ways. I guess quite a traditional way, we would have a group of grants managers women would apply to us and we would make the grants. And then I guess informed by what we were hearing and research, we decided to change our program, piloting actually working through partners, so devolving grant making power to a selection of partners for them to deliver the grants on our behalf. So we're now about 4 or 5 years into that program, and we started with probably just 3 partners, and we now have 29. And about a third of our grant making is now devolved and done through these local partners. So they are women's organisations and sort of women's sector services across England. Some of them very, very tiny, others quite large. So they're all quite different. What they all have in common is that they're all experts in providing support to women. And so Smallwood provide the funding and the grant making support, and also a peer support network. And then the organisations provide the grants alongside the support that they're already very experienced in delivering. And so I will talk a bit more about the programme in depth, some of our learnings, some of the things that we've changed and adapted as we've gone along on this journey. And we're still very much learning as well.
Thank you, Emma. Second, we're going to present the Young Gamechangers Fund. And just to do a very short introduction before handing over to Keith. At COPE Foundation, we launched a new strategy, Building Communities of the Future Together, in 2023, including commitment to investing in individuals. That commitment came up during actually the forming of our strategy. When we were doing stakeholder discussions, we found out that there is a gap in the funding for individual young people who aspire to create social change in their communities. When we brought back this feedback to our team internally, the COPE Foundation team, we were all very enthusiastic in building on this recommendation from our stakeholders. And also to add that COPE Foundation is COPE's charity, and we aspire to be more innovative and creative with our approaches. So this idea that came up from our stakeholders aligned really well with our approach to grant giving. So the Young Gamechangers Fund is match funded by the COPE Foundation, Co-op, and the I Will Fund, and gives funding directly to young people or organizations set up by young people or organizations a young person is a member of. And it is being delivered by our wonderful delivery partners, Global Fund for Children and Restless Development. Keith, over to you to tell us more about the fund.
Thank you. I'm going to hand to Tim, actually. He's going to talk you through this
myself. So as Asimina said, Young Gamechangers Fund is like aimed to be a bold new approach, and the real focus on it being led by young people, so designed by young people for young people. The grant funds, the fund gives grants to individuals and youth-led groups and organisations. And that's like a really key part of the idea, is that we put in the power and the ability to lead projects around youth social action with young people, youth-led programmes and activities. Our youngest individual grantee is just 10 years old. Our eldest is 25, so we are funding across the full spectrum of the age range that the grant is trying to reach. And the whole idea, as we've put here, is that the funding is what matters to young people. And we have a panel of young people who decide how the grant should be funded based on the criteria that they are setting. And one of their key aims the young people set was to this idea that the grant and the fund should reach underrepresented groups who may struggle to find access to funding from other traditional sources. So one of those things might be that if they're an individual, they're not a constituted group, they don't have like group or bank accounts and things like that. So how can we give young people who are in that situation access to resources to lead the projects and things they want to do? And then there's a real strong focus as well across the delivery team. So we've got 3 amazing program support officers that's all about supporting the learning and the development of the young people that we funded. And just the next one. So the steering group, this is not all of our steering group, but this is a representation of some of our steering group. And the bullet points along the right-hand side are really the key things. And what's really interesting is actually I took these bullet points from the things that the steering group have said about themselves and what they represent in being part of the steering group. So it's a group of young people that have designed this programme at all stages, so they have been involved right from the start, and the application process and what that should look like, setting the criteria, has all been done by them. And I think there's a real key thing about like the steering group is representative of young people who bring their lived experiences, their passions and their interests. They've all actually been involved in some form of youth activism before. And I think that's really key, that they're bringing their experiences and what they see into this role and into the role that they play with Young Gamechangers Fund. And that's really informed the decisions that they've made. Next one. So we've just gone through our first grant round. So what are some of the projects that we've funded? So you can see from the map, we've funded projects across the whole of the UK, a mixture of individuals, groups and organisations. Some of those groups and organisations are very, they're not constituted, they're more like collectives. So they're activists and campaigners and people that are active in their own community. Some of the project topics and groups that we've funded cover this and more. So we are really reaching a wide range of young people, and they have all just received their funding pretty soon. And we will be delivering these programs going forward. And we're really excited to see the projects and the activities that the young people are taking. So a couple of examples of that, we have a young person who runs a project called Fungal CIC. So his whole program is about helping people to understand fungus is important, but also wider environmental and climate issues through the project that he's doing, getting people in his community involved in fungus growing and understanding what that's about and the wider issues. We've also funded a young person who is running a program around inclusive sportswear for young women. So how can the sportswear that young people wear, young women wear, make it more accessible for them to continue to engage in sports and that not to become a barrier. So we have a wide range of projects and we're really excited to see how they develop this year.
And Katherine, over to you to talk us about the Spark Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Asimina. So yes, Global Fund for Children, as Tim says, are acting as delivery partner along with Restless Development for Young Gamechangers Fund, but mainly I'm here today to talk about our other youth-led fund, which is the Spark Fund. So the Spark Fund is our global youth-led participatory grant-making round, and it looks different everywhere we run it. And that's something that we're really, really proud of and really, really invested in, is making sure that although this is a partnership fund with lots and lots of different funders involved, it really is shaped and led by young people within the regions where they're working. If we can go to the second slide, Asimina. So these are just some of our stats. So the Spark Fund's been running since 2021. It was conceived of during the pandemic, so a lot of the original work was online, but we're now running this in multilingual face-to-face settings, so thinking about language justice in this. But we are currently working in 16 countries and with hundreds of young leaders across those countries. We have 62 local partners who are currently receiving support by the Spark Fund, and they've been selected by young people representing 18 countries around the world. And what was really important for us as well is that when we're doing this sort of participatory youth-led grant making, that the young people coming in are bringing their community experience, but not necessarily replicating existing grant-making models. So it was really important for us that 70% of the 70% plus of the young people involved in shaping funds and making decisions were completely new to grant making. So we're challenging us as well as building new things. And then in total, by September, we'll be at $1.4 million globally dispersed to youth-led groups, youth-led activists around the world in those 16 countries. And this is still growing. We're really excited about this. It is a way for us to make sure that the work we're doing is really rooted by young people in the communities that we're working in. And to date, we have 9 funders represented in the Spark Fund, and we'll talk a little bit more in the panel session about those partnerships. But yes, really excited to talk about this a bit more today.
Thank you, Katherine. I guess, it's quite evident. We brought together today different funding programs to individuals that represent funding to young people, funding to women, different purposes, funding to create social change, funding to support individuals that might have challenges in their life, but also funding in the UK and funding abroad. And now we're going to start a discussion. And first, let's start by hearing more about why did you create and deliver your funding in individuals in partnership, and why does partnership work strengthen the funding, and who did you involve? So Katherine, over to you. Would love to know more about Sparks Fund.
Sorry, Brent. We'll apologise before the panel discussion for any technical mishaps. We're in the co-op offices and struggling a little bit with the tech. So the Spark Fund, for us, it was always conceived of as something we would deliver in partnership. So we knew that because we started during the pandemic, that we had a huge amount of experience in delivering capacity development work to young people and youth-led organisations. But we're also kind of aware that the demands of the pandemic and the need for remote working meant that we would have to invest much, much more heavily in technology. And that wasn't something that we traditionally had done. We spend a lot of time face-to-face with our partners, and we have team members that are in communities that spend time in communities. So it was really new for us to shift to doing everything online. So we found another funder who wanted to partner with us that was really heavily involved in the tech space. And that made a massive difference to us being able to deliver a global program, a global participatory program in the middle of a global pandemic. So for us, it was exactly what you said, Asimina, thinking about those gaps in our practice, the skills and experience we did have, and then partnering with another funder to fill those gaps so that young people could make better decisions. So that was our key starting point. But that then led us to thinking about some of the other gaps and also some of the other interests in this. So for us, we do have a big, shiny name, Global Fund for Children, but we're pretty small. So one of the things that's important to us is that we're working with other funders to increase funding to youth-led groups, but also that when we're working around this, we're shifting the way that funders are working to become more flexible, more participatory. So for us, that means inviting people in. So we now have, as I said, 9 funders involved in the Spark Fund globally. And the way that this works is that it's a pooled fund. So people can invest in either the whole vision, or they can invest in the parts of it that they're interested in. So we have some funders, for example, that have come on board purely to fund the learning partner, so that we can think about how learning is done around participatory grant making and how we capture that better. We have other funders that are just interested in making flexible grants, so they fund just the grants, and other funders come in and fund the work behind the scenes. So what we find is the partnership here increases interest from different funders that are maybe only interested in parts of these funds. It increases the flow of money to young people, which for us is the ultimate goal. And then it also brings in different skills and experience. But I'll pause there. There's lots more we could say about this. The final thing, I will just jump in and answer that question. I saw you mention it, Asimina, but for YGF and for Spark Fund, none of this is hardship funds. All of this is focused on funding individuals and groups and communities and organisations, and is largely flexible funding or project funding. We do make emergency grants to our partners, but that is a byproduct of our relationship with them, not before either of these models do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katherine. And just to share, you know, from the COPE Foundation perspective, why did we decide it was important for us to work with delivery partners? First of all, it was the first time we were going to do grant making directly to individuals, and we wanted to do it in partnership with organizations who already had that experience. Second, this funding requires skills related to youth engagement, facilitation skills, and established grant-making processes to distribute the funding directly to young people. We are still developing our youth engagement expertise and confidence in our team. Hence, again, it was important to work with another partner organization who was already progressed, I guess, in the journey to that aspect. And last, our team does not have experience of working directly with young people. And for us, the sensible and more safe option from a safeguarding perspective was to ensure this aspect was delivered by others who did have the necessary expertise. We ran a tender process, and we had 3 proposals, other individual organizations or organizations in partnership who wanted to deliver this funding in collaboration with us and our match funders, and our chosen delivery partners who are, you know, wonderfully present in this session, combine skills and expertise and add incredible value to our funding program. They have significant depth of experience working with young people, and their values are aligned to us, and an ethos and ways of working that support youth leadership, and have already delivered, as you've heard, a fund to young people. And the proposal that we received indicated to us not only relevant experience and knowledge, but also alignment with us on the importance of authentically shifting the power to young people. So Emma, over to you. We would love to hear more, you know, why did you decide to give in partnership with delivery organizations, and how did you choose them?
Sure. So, yeah, so just to answer the question, Smallwood's grants are some of them are used, some of them are given as hardship grants. Some of them might be given as a series of grants. Maybe, for example, if a woman is entering employment, and so I guess the way the program is designed is that it's flexible. We have sort of 4 broad aims, but it's flexible to meet the needs of the individual woman. And that is decided by the woman who is being awarded the grant, and also the organisation that is delivering the grant. So I guess similar to what Katherine and Asimina have said, really, we recognised that actually, in order to have better longer term outcomes for individual women, that we needed to work in partnership, and that there were already a group of organisations that are experts in delivering support to women. What we learned is that those organisations were also spending an awful lot of time applying for hardship grants. So support workers would spend lots of time filling in applications, not knowing whether they were going to be successful. And often, although the organisations could provide great support, there was still a financial barrier. And so really for us, it was about looking at how the funding could have the most impact. And so rather than us delivering support sort of remotely over the phone, we decided to work in partnership. I guess in terms of our partners, we first of all sort of did a bit of a mapping exercise. So we had started to work with some organisations already. We also do grants to organisations to deliver sort of their frontline work. But we looked at really where the groups of women were that are most affected by poverty, and then also the partners that were reaching those groups. What it means for us is that our funding is able to reach women furthest away from support. And in particular, that means we're now able to support women with no recourse to public funds, who we just weren't able to, who just weren't applying to us before. And so we just weren't able to reach them. Having a flexible criteria, like I said before, means that the partners are able to adapt the grant to the individual women's need, but also to fit with their service delivery. So it really is designed to be an enhancement to what they're already delivering. I guess as well, by working through partners, they are able to give grants there and then to women. So if there is a woman that presents in hardship, you know, for example, we have cases of women where they have nowhere to stay that evening, and so the beauty of working through the organisations is that they're able to put a roof over that woman's head and then support her in the long term. And I'll talk a bit more sort of later just about some of the other things that the partners have told us about the impact of the programme, because we found it to be much broader than we sort of first expected.
Brilliant, thank you, Emma. And also to highlight, please use the comment boxes to ask any questions, and there is a Q&A part of this session at the end, so we'll be able to answer your questions. Now, we would love to know more about, there is, of course, you know, between the funders and the organizations who actually deliver the fund, it is possible to have, you know, power dynamics in the interplay. So we would love to know what is the unique power dynamic when working in partnership, and how, you know, is it possible to navigate this? So Emma, would you like to tell us a bit more about your response to that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the way we look at the Community Grant Partnership Programme is that it is part of Smallwood's sort of broader mission to try and shift power and devolve grant making to the communities that we're here to support, so to the organisations that are closest to the women. I guess a few things about power dynamics. So trust has been incredibly important. So placing trust and having trust in the partners to deliver the funding. But we also recognise that our partners, although they're experts in sort of service delivery and supporting women, that many of them hadn't made grants before. You know, they weren't grant makers. And so we created a sort of grant making toolkit with the partners, and we provided a framework so that they had a decision making framework to support them, but also to help them with things like, I can see you've raised there are a couple of questions in the chat, but just around, you know, managing conflict of interest and making sure that they are following sort of due diligence procedures, but it's flexible enough that it fits within the support that they're already providing and their own existing procedures. And I guess another thing that we've tried to do as the program's gone along, which has definitely been a consideration around power dynamics, is we, at the beginning of the program, had quite a prescriptive split of funding. So we said, you know, 80% of the grant that we give you, and they're sort of 3-year partnerships, 80% has to be used on grants to individuals, and then 20% can be used for your overheads or admin. What we learned as we were going through is that, you know, the organisations that we support are all so different from one another and have very different needs and requirements. So we actually made that much more flexible. So we said as long as 50% of the funding is spent on individual women, you know, we're happy for you to tell us what percentage you need to be spent on actually helping you deliver the programme. So we have tried to listen and sort of adapt the programme as we've gone along, to, I guess, to sort of keep that awareness of power dynamics. We've also streamlined the reporting and co-created a reporting system, and reduced the sort of frequency of reporting as well, for partners.
Thank you so much, Emma. I love the thoughtfulness and also the care. The way you talk about, you know, the relation with the delivery partners is amazing. definitely for other funders, you know, to take example. So yeah, Keith, would you like to tell us from your perspective, what would be your response around power dynamics and navigating around these?
Yeah, I mean, just to add briefly to what Emma said, I think it's important that you recognise the different things that the partners will be bringing. So that might be the funding or the strategy behind that, the evidence, the research behind it. It can be the expertise in working with a particular group of individuals, or maybe youth engagement, and also in working in a participatory way. So you're bringing that all together. And it's important that you kind of respect all those different elements. It shouldn't be that one kind of partner or group has more power or more of a say because they bring the money or because they are the ones that have the expertise in working with a certain group. So it does mean, to an extent, you need to make time to then kind of work together to think about how you want to structure and deliver things, and build in time kind of for those conversations. That you know, this does take time. That's a simple thing, but it's important to recognise that. And I think, you know, when it comes to meaningfully engaging different groups of people, that is something that you need to allow kind of time and space for, and you need to allow partners to do that. But then also, I think, recognising, respecting on the other side the parameters that might come with funding that you also need to work around as well. So I think, you know, those things that we've reflected on, and this is of course with regards to the power dynamics between the partners, and then you also have the very significant power dynamic when it comes to the actual individuals that you're supporting. So we're, as Emma noted, you know, we're on a journey to kind of shift power to young people and them, and I think maybe the way that you kind of work with the partners is part of that journey to shifting power as well.
Thank you, Keith. And, you know, as we are amongst friends today, I can be honest and say that this isn't always plain sailing. We have 3 different funders in our funding program, and clarity around roles and expectations is very important. We started by setting out clear parameters for our responsibilities, and it took some time to get, you know, the balance of this right. We have regular project management meetings with our fantastic delivery partners, and we are actually about to meet, as you've seen, face-to-face in Manchester today to reflect on how we work together, share learning from the design and launch of our fund, and plan the next launch of the second round. So investing time in relationships and being honest where there's important learning is crucial to a successful partnership. So now we'd like to know a little bit more about the Funder Plus support, the wraparound care around the individuals that we fund. Keith, would you like to tell us a bit more about the Young Gamechangers Fund and your responsibility of providing this support to the young people?
Yeah, so now we've just started giving out the funding, so we're looking at this additional support. So we've built up a kind of a structured support offer, which involves a number of elements. So each grantee has a dedicated kind of one-to-one contact or support officer they'll be working with. So we've got kind of a team of 3, and they each have a portfolio of grantees, and they're there to kind of work with them to help them build up a support plan and kind of identify their needs. So they have that personal relationship. And in addition to that, there's kind of different elements of training, which might go from the more maybe kind of more mandatory side, or what is needed to safely and effectively deliver their grants, to kind of areas of interest for the development, those with funding, and what they might need to increase the impact of their work. So that can cut across things such as advocacy, campaigning, storytelling. And then we're also looking at setting up mentoring and networking opportunities, maybe between grantees and beyond. So there's this offer we're building. The key thing is that it's very responsive to the individuals. So we kind of go with the momentum of kind of where they want to work, and we try and source that support. And I think there's also going to be a fair amount of emphasis on peer learning too, so that the individuals, the grantees can learn from each other in this as well. And I guess I'd say the other thing we really need to be mindful of this is, we know that how kind of activism and the work that people are doing, particularly if it relates to kind of things that are very close to their own lived experience, that can put a certain toll on them. So we need to think about their well-being. I think working with our own within the duty of care that we have. So that could mean practically, in our case, we can help them develop personal resilience plans, and what steps can they do to kind of take care of themselves as well. So we do touch on that more kind of pastoral element as well.
Thank you, Keith. Brilliant learning. And in our scoping study, actually, we did find a lot of funders conduct a needs assessment at the beginning of giving the grants to the individual, provide personalized support, and also add additional session support based on emerging needs. So what is the case with your grants, Emma? We've seen in other funders who give smaller grants to individuals in hardship that they do that with delivery partners who have also kind of this pastoral care support, and so that, you know, it's not like you give a small grant and you leave the individual, you know, in their own means. We'd love to know more about your practice, your learnings.
Yeah, so I guess there's sort of the capacity building support that Smallwood does to support its grant partners, but then there is the support that goes alongside the grant, and this is what the organizations do. So that will be really dependent upon what the organization does, and who the women are that it works with. But I'll just give you a few examples maybe of how grants are used alongside support. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, so grants can be used for things such as housing. So we work with a lot of organisations that support women that are maybe coming out of the criminal justice system. And so what the grant might be used for is as a package of support to help them get their independence back and to move into their own home. And really, this is that sort of financial support at that point is so critical for that woman's long-term financial and emotional resilience, because what we often hear is that it then means that she can eventually go on, for example, to move into a stable job or employment, and to get her children back. So there are lots of cases of where women have maybe had their children removed. And so although the organisation can provide the support and they're excellent at providing the support, there's often just a financial barrier. And so that means that women might disengage or not even engage with the service at the beginning. Some of our partners have reported that they've been able to reach, because they've now got this financial support they're able to provide, they've been able to reach women that they just would not be able to reach before, and to bring them into the service. What the grants have also enabled the partners to do is to just build a much deeper trust between the women and the support workers. And that's also because the model means that organisations can provide a one-off grant, but they can also provide a series of grants, and they can really work with the woman to understand, you know, what is the best use of the grant and when should it be used along her journey. In terms of how Smallwood supports its partners and things that we do, so we do have a community of practice for our community grant partners. This is a space that is facilitated by Smallwood, and that's what the partners asked for and they wanted. But it's a space for partners to come together around core topics such as advocacy and sort of the sharing best practice, and that is externally facilitated at the moment, and we're running a pilot to see kind of how that goes and what more the organisations might want from the space. What we also do is provide sort of tailored one-off HR support and something called power hours, and so these are with two associates that Smallwood works with and who know our partners, and so these are really targeted at the needs of the individual organisation. So the HR support is, you see, as it sounds, HR support, but it might be focused on something really specific that they just need an answer about, and maybe don't, if it's a small organisation, maybe don't have access to a HR individual. And then power hours are anything from sort of governance, strategy, looking at what the organization needs to survive in the long term. And so we found that sort of mixture of kind of group support, but also one-to-one support is better for meeting the needs of the kind of wide variety of partners that we've got.
I love this double way of, capacity building you have built as a funder. Again, I think these learnings apply not only when you give funding to individuals through delivery partners, but in any partnership, I guess, model funding. So I would love to know, as we mentioned earlier, Smallwood funding is to women that can be younger or older. And our funding and the Sparks funding is actually to younger people. So team, I would love you to give us some reflections on what is really the difference between funding in particular young people as individuals, and why is it important also this relationship with that the delivery partners builds with them?
Yeah, thanks, Asimina. I think actually some of the things that I might say now may in part answer some of the questions that Ewan's posed, but probably not fully, but we can do a little bit. So I suppose one of the things that we've done with, particularly focus on the individuals. So the first round of the YGF funding, Young Gamechangers funding, has funded 8 individual young people, as I said before, from an age range to just the youngest who's 10 years old, up until their early 20s. And one of the things that we focused on with this group was to really meet with them. So the first thing we did after we informed them that they'd been selected for the grant was to meet with them and begin to understand the situation that those young people find themselves in. In the ones that are between, we have a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 16-year-old, so they're also not adults themselves. So the really key thing with them was also to make sure that they have an adult that's supporting them, and that's clear that what that relationship is. But our focus for YGF is, for as much as we possibly can, for those young people to still be at the lead and for us to be working with them, with the support of the adult. And I think that's really key and something you have to consider when you're working with young grantees. But also the ones that are adults, we've created space for them to identify people that might want to support them. And part of that is also the idea that they may not have had funding before or been through a funding or a grant process before. And it's really important to support them and make sure that we're not setting them up to kind of either fail or to encounter challenges and problems because of things that they may not yet have had the experience of. So that is also a really important thing. Not taking for granted that they even understand how to complete the grant processes or they understand how to read and engage with the terms and conditions, things like that. So it's really important to support them. One of the things we did with all of them was something that we called, for want of a better expression, a financial risk assessment. So part of that is also making sure that when we're giving out a grant to an individual, that we understand the circumstances in which they're living their lives and what are some of the risk factors or some of the challenges that may be an issue for them to receive a large grant. So the YGF grants are up to £20,000. So it's a significant amount of money that we're proposing to give to an individual young person to lead and develop their project. So how do we do that safely? One of the things that we had in that was having no fixed idea about how a grant would be paid. As we've seen through the work with the individuals, we have a range of some young people receiving grants directly to themselves, some having the payment made fully into a fiscal sponsor that they're working really closely with, and a hybrid approach, which includes things like looking at prepaid cards. And I think one of the other things around support and understanding our role and some of the things around our expertise is knowing that we actually, as a team, we're not experienced in giving financial advice. So we're also working with people that can provide that and can enable that. So I think there's some of the things to really important to consider when you're funding young people, particularly if you're funding individuals, but young people generally. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you for answering partly the questions we received already. I guess we found that reflection or advice or caution during our scoping study, but I think, Katherine, you've already had some criticisms we may have when funding individuals that, for example, we fund directly young people, and that means we divert funding that usually would go, to youth-focused organizations, to youth infrastructure organizations. So from your perspective, what would be your response to this criticism?
Thanks, Asimina. Yeah, so we maybe set ourselves up to fail a little bit and get this question quite a lot. Our two strategic sort of guiding principles are youth and children as leaders and change makers, and also a commitment to community-led systems change. So that has definitely led to some questions, some interest in how we balance those two things if we're giving funding to individual young people rather than through community-led organisations, which is our traditional model. So for us, it's really important that it's not an either or. If we're looking at systems change, it's really important to us that we are funding across the ecosystem as much as we can, but also that we're partnering where we can't. And that's because we believe that particularly children and young people and children and youth-led efforts are often face higher barriers to creating change compared to adult-led groups and organisations, and also struggle to access the resources and funding that they need. So we think it's really important that we fund young people in the way that they are asking us to fund them. So this was, for us, really driven by young people around the world, particularly in spaces where it's hard to register as a charity or an NGO if you're under 18, for example, including in the UK, where it's difficult to access funding that asks for a track record when you're 16 or 18 or 25 and you're competing against organisations that have existed for 50 years. So we thought it was really important that we were investing in where young people are already creating change, because they are doing it whether we're funding them or not, but that we're doing that in a way that takes into account the opportunities across systems to create change. So we always fund both the Young Gamechangers Fund and the Spark Fund, do that within the fund. They fund individuals, but they also fund the community-led groups and organisations that young people are also part of and are leading. So we don't really see it as an either or. We do think there are risks, and Tim set out quite a few of those risks to young people and to communities of distorting the funding landscape, of some young people becoming individualised or atomised. So we do think it's really important it comes with a community-led approach. But we do think young people are wholly part of the communities, are creating change in communities, and actually we're just resourcing something that is already making that change rather than creating something new. So I think it's important we keep that in mind, but we think it's really vital that when young people tell us what they need, that we're able to respond to that.
Thank you, Katherine. We have some key reflections to share, I guess, as panel members. But it's also important to dedicate some time to answering any questions from a wonderful audience today. Please use the chat or hold your hand up or unmute yourselves. We have already some questions from you, and we've partly answered some of them. Maybe there are some unanswered around monitoring on individual grants and approach to sustainability. Emma, would you like to, do you have any reflections on this?
Yeah, sure. In terms of, yes, Smallwood's approach is very much to take a we take a trust-based approach to monitoring. So when we used to do grants direct to individual women, we would not collect receipts. That was just not something we did. I know some funders choose to do that. What we do have sort of an application process, application form that we ask the partners to collect, and then there are, in terms of things like accountability and due diligence, there are several sort of sign-off procedures so that that we ask the organisations to follow. I can send you our toolkit, and it is somewhere on our website, buried somewhere. Because I think we put it on a news story when we published it a few years ago, but I'm happy to share that with you because that talks a bit more about our approach and the processes and the systems that we ask the partners to follow. It is very much based on trust. In terms of the monitoring of the individual grants, so we do ask for things like a report on, where the grants have gone and how much money has been spent. But that's all anonymized, and we mostly focus on sort of the impact and the longer term outcomes of the funding plus the support. So yeah, but I can send you our toolkit, and for anyone else that would like it as well.
And from our side, or Spark side, do you have to share anything around the sustainability? And also the second question on how do we manage the grants? What's the grants management system we use? It's good to share some practicalities as well.
Yeah, so I can jump in initially. So we do use a grant management system, and we also use an application system. We've got different ones for Young Gamechangers Fund and also for Spark Fund. So yeah, there's a lot of tech behind the scenes to make this work. We currently use a system called Given Data, but as of next month, we're moving to Salesforce, which everyone assures me is much better if painful to get there. So yeah, the tech behind the scenes is really important, so that partly so that it's accessible for young people, for us, but also so that we can take a blended approach, so young people can fit decision making into their own time, and grant making works practically and easily for them. Sustainability is a really interesting one for individuals, because it doesn't mean the same thing as it does for organisations. So if we are investing in the sustainability of an organisation, we kind of want the organisation and their mission and vision and values to be working in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years time. But for an individual young person creating change, part of what we know happens is that people's interests change, their life changes, their job changes. So actually, I think Emma's completely right. It's about the sustainability and the impact of the work they're doing now, rather than the sustainability of that young person continuing to do that work, if that makes sense. So I think the question around sustainability is really, really interesting, because we just have to think about it completely differently. And I think that's part of the challenge of entering this space, is that a lot of our traditional models of capacity development support, the Funder Plus offer, just don't make sense when we're working with individual people, whether that's young people, children, or anyone else. Keith, did you want to, that you were going to say something?
Well, yeah, I think just very briefly in terms of sustainability, yeah, the support offer and what that can add to people in terms of their own development means something. And we're also thinking about kind of follow-up funding, but when we kind of come to that, maybe doing a review to kind of sustainability as well. Yeah,
we found from our scoping study that other funders either set up a smaller pot of funding after the first initial grant is finishing, others giving support to the individuals on how to set up their own organizations, setting up alumni networks, or even annual gatherings of the grant recipients after they finish the grant, or even signposting them to other funders. There's also an element of pastoral care. Other funders have developed a kind of more longer-term relationship with the individuals, and they continue to support them when opportunity arises, and have catch-ups in different time frames after the grant finishes. Last reflections, Emma, would you like to add anything on sustainability? And we're going to close the session.
I guess, yeah, maybe we think about sustainability a little bit differently at Smallwood in terms of the community grant partnership, because the whole reason why we changed to the model was because we recognize that support plus grants is a much better model for those longer term outcomes for women. So I guess it's sort of inbuilt into our program.
Thank you. And one key learning from this panel kind of member to leave you today from the session, for me, from the COPE Foundation perspective, make sure you establish clear roles and responsibilities with your delivery partners as a funder. Trust your delivery partners. I hope we showcase this today, all of us. Always check in and reflect on power dynamics, and use the partnerships as an opportunity for professional development and learning for your own team as the funder. And ensure there is also a direct relationship between you as a funder and the individuals you fund. Emma, would you like to share any last reflection, key learning for our wonderful audience?
Yeah, I think if I would say if any funders are thinking about delivering, especially grants to individuals through partners, I would say to definitely do it. And I think to trust the partners. Also from our learning, it may be tempting to add additional layers of bureaucracy, but I would challenge you to actually think about it in the opposite way. So I think it's a real opportunity to streamline your processes and make them as flexible and open as possible. And that's all about that trust that you've got in the partners. And just to be willing to spend extra time at the beginning to support the partners, especially if they're new to grant making, be willing to listen and adapt the programme as well as you go through.
Thank you. And Katherine, over to you for the last key learning of the session. Thank you.
No pressure, Asimina. I think mainly our key learning, and it's particularly around children and young people, is that there are significant additional risks of doing this, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You should try and find someone who has the skills and expertise to mitigate those risks. And we're happy to share our learning and to have these conversations, because there's no point reinventing wheels in this space, but it is different. So I would encourage everyone to definitely invest in this space, but to do it with the people that know how to do it. Working with children and young people is very different from working with adults sometimes. But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please do take 5 minutes of your time to give us some feedback. I've shared the link to our feedback form. We'd love to hear what you took for your organization from this session, but also improve our future sessions for other funders. Thank you to our wonderful panel members, to our participants with the great questions, and big thank you to the London funders for the Festival of Learning. We look forward to being part of other sessions and attending and learning from other funders as well.
Wonderful session. Thank you all very, very much, and see you again, I hope, in other sessions. Take care.